My name's Adela and I make minis. This month I've challenged myself to make 100 vases in 100 days. So for day 15 I actually had a plan, but I totally forgot about it and went on a bit of a mad one. To kick things off, we'll begin with the body as always. I make these in two halves, usually starting with the bottom and then moving on to the top. This one had some holes when I was joining the two halves, so I had to be really careful and gentle with it. But once it's airtight, I can be a bit firmer and continue to make the final shape. Next, I moved on to the neck, and for this one, I decided to go for a really thin neck, so I had to be super careful. Last time I made such a thin neck, I had loads of trouble cutting out the opening. So this time, I had the cunning idea to cut out the opening before adding the neck, and that ended up working a treat. So once the neck is on, I trim it down just a little bit, and then I move on to the handles. For this one, I decided to go for nice chunky handles to balance out the thin neck. And next we're on to the foot, and for this one I just went for a concave bottom, and that reduces the chances of it ending up being a wobbly pot. Once I'd finished this guy, I thought it needed a little bit more decoration. What I like to do usually is take a photo and then draw over the photo, and that gives me a really good, speedy and accurate idea of what it might look like, and I prefer doing it this way rather than spending ages on a drawing because I just want to get ideas out. For this one I couldn't decide between stripes or a nice little face.
He looks like his little ears.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? In the end, I decided to go for the little face. Yeah, alright. You've convinced me. And I think I made the right decision. I really love this guy. He's super cute. Day 16 was another ambitious day. I was quite intrigued by the tulipiere-inspired piece that I made last week, so I thought, take two, let's try again. So once I'd got my body down, I then moved on to the many spouts or necks that this piece is going to have. Last time I made 3 spouts and then I had a lot of trouble adding a 4th. I couldn't get it to match in shape or size or anything. So this time I decided to make all of the little spouts at once. So once I'd got them made up and added to the body, I added tiny little sausages of clay to the base of each one to give it a really nice smooth shape and a nice transition, and to make sure that the join is nice and strong. I then moved on to pinching out the rim, which ended up being a lot harder this time around because you've got all the other little spouts in the way and you can't quite get your fingers in there properly. I then move on to the foot, and for this one I went for something quite simple. I used my thimble once again to give me a template for the bottom, and then I created a nice thin taper which I attached to the body. When I was done with this one, I didn't think I liked it. I thought that maybe the spouts were too big or that the foot was too small. But once I'd put some tiny little flowers in there, it really came to life, and I think I've changed my mind. So after using all of that brain power yesterday, I decided to have a little bit of a break today and work quite instinctually. I've gone for a really simple body today, and then I've attached my neck, making sure to add my tiny little clay sausage. I then trimmed it down a little bit and moved on to the handles. Today I wanted to play around a little bit with where to place them. I went initially lower down the body with the handles, but then I chickened out and I went closer to where I'd usually put them. I'm not sure why I did that, but I definitely need to start getting better at taking some risks. I then decided that he needs to be zhuzhed up a little bit with some colour or some pattern, but before I did that I realised I hadn't cut out the opening, so I went ahead and did that. So once he was totally finished, I got out my coloured slip, which is just a liquid clay with some colours in, and I went for some really nice, happy, loose stripes. Again, not really thinking about it, just really going for it. I'm super pleased with this tiny guy, and if you like him too, don't worry because he will be available through my website as soon as he's finished. Today I tried a slightly different shape from the previous days. I ended up going for a tapered body, which was inspired by a really banging ancient vase that I'd seen from Crete. So once I was happy with the shape of the body, I then moved on to the neck. I started off with quite a wide neck, but then I ended up ruining it when I added my clay sausage. I'd lost that nice sharp edge around the shoulder, which is where the neck and the body meet, when I added that extra clay. So I was trying to sculpt that back, but I ended up just narrowing the opening instead. So once I'd got my handles down, I moved on to the foot, which was another fancy foot. I think I'm really getting into them now. And once that was finished and added to the body, I then decided to give the piece some texture. So I went ahead and added some fluting, which I think finishes it off really nicely. I did think that the foot could be a little bit wider to balance out the overall shape, but once again, when I added some tiny flowers, it looked so much better. I think I'm starting to realise that you can't just look at these pieces as they are, but you have to think about what you're going to put in them after they're finished. And whatever that is also going to form part of that final shape. So going forward, I think I'm going to start thinking about how a single stem or a bouquet might affect the shape of the piece. For day 19, I decided to go in a slightly different direction, and I wonder if you can guess what I ended up making today, and let me know in the comments if this one counts. So starting off with the body, I went quite big again, because these shrink a lot when they go through the kiln, because all of the moisture that's in the clay evaporates away, and all you're left with is the stone, essentially. So once I'd got my neck attached, I then moved on to a little pouring spout. I ended up using my paintbrush and then my other hand was there to support, but it went okay for a first try, but the clay did crack a little bit because it was super thin. I then went for a really nice sturdy handle, and then I moved on to the foot. And for this one, I was really inspired by medieval jugs, and a lot of them have these textured bottoms, which I imagine they did this really quickly with their fingers, just sort of smeared it down. And I love that you can see these maker's marks. It really humanises these pieces and makes them special. You know they were made by someone and not a machine. Sadly, my fingers are way too big to do this on my tiny jug, so in the end I made do with my paintbrush, but I tried to work really quickly and not being too finicky to try and capture that organic feel. I'm quite pleased with how this one turned out. I think I'd definitely like to try some more jugs, but again, does this count as a vase? I'm not sure. You can put flowers in it, so I think it does. Today was a really fun day. I wanted to play with extremes again. So I went for a nice round, large body and then a tall, skinny neck. And once I'd got that attached, I moved on to the foot, which was yet again a fancy foot. And when I was happy with how that was looking, I then moved on to the handles. For this one, I was also really interested in playing with the classical proportions. I decided to put the handles much lower on the body than you'd usually see on this kind of silhouette. And I really love it. The shape is just, amazing. And I'm really getting into these low handles. On day 21, I decided it was pretty late, so let's keep things simple. I went for a really nice, easy shape for the body that I didn't have to refine too much once I joined my two halves together. Then we were moving on to the neck. Once that's on the body, I realised that it was a little bit too soft to move on to the rim, so let's go to the handles while we're waiting for that to firm up. I went for some nice big handles right in the middle of the body, and I think I'll definitely start playing around some more with where these handles end up going. So now that we've had a little bit of time, the clay's firmed up and I can pinch out a rim. And it's looking pretty good, but it looks a little bit naked. I don't think I want to paint this one, so instead I'm going to add a tiny little medallion or stamp that you see a lot on medieval pottery and a lot of fancy flower pots nowadays. This one was actually take 2 because I was so tired that I didn't even realise I wasn't recording the first take. It's a good thing that I actually didn't like that one and I scrapped it in the end. And I'm quite glad that I had a second go because this guy turned out super cute and very tiny. And so that is week 3 done. I had a lot of fun this week playing around with a lot of different shapes and some new ideas. I've got, where's my calculator? I've got 79 more minis to make and I really hope you join me on this journey. Thanks so much for watching this video and please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss next week's. Bye!